Welcome back to Astoria.
I'm Kylie.
I'm Jamie.
We're excited for another episode. We get to share the world of history with you all.
Yes.
Very exciting. Of course, I don't know what Jamie's saying, what Jamie's talking about today, because we don't talk about it beforehand.
Dude, I went so random for the episodes that I'm covering.
I love it.
Like, it's literally all over the place.
I'm excited to see what we're talking about today.
This is a fun one that I think you will really enjoy.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. It's a topic we haven't discussed in a while, and it has inspired me lately, and that is covering mythology.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since we've done mythology.
I know. So I was like, I should do another one. So to be specific, this week we are diving into another character in the Greek mythology pantheon.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this story, or should I say tragedy, is one of the most popular to the ancient Greeks and a tale to learn from. So today we are talking about the sad tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice.
I knew you were going to say it. Oh my God. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I decided to do this one because I recently went to New York, and my husband and I spent a couple days in New York City because I forced him to, and I wanted to go see a Broadway show. Mm-hmm. And the one that I decided to go see after Kylie's just like, you have to go see it, was Hadestown, which is about Hades, Persephone, Orpheus, and Eurydice.
It's so freaking good.
It was fantastic. I thought it was so well done. My husband really liked it. He was he was so entranced, like at some points, like the really like kind of slow parts, he kind of dozed off. But he thought it was so cool how the stage literally rotated and stuff, and how they used that smaller space to really make it feel bigger. But and then Jordan Fisher was
you got to
Orpheus.
see Jordan Fisher. That's so cool.
This guy is so small. Like he's probably like what, 5'7", 5'8", or whatever. But I just saw him and I was like, oh my God.
That's so funny.
But he did really good. They all did really good.
One of my favorite things about that show, I saw the original cast, which was really cool. But one of my favorite things about the show is like the background characters add so much to the show.
They do.
Like they're so necessary in like the way that they like chant together. Oh, I could talk about it forever. But it's such a great show.
It was really good. So I was like, oh, I'm very curious to know like what the actual, because I know I've heard this story of Orpheus and Eurydice before, but not to the extent of like, I was like, I know it had to do with him walking from the underworld, but I was like, oh, did it end happily or did it end sad? And I was like, it probably ended sad because Greek tragedies were the way of how they did everything.
Because the musical ends so sad.
Yeah, I mean, like with the musical, you don't know what happens afterwards, whereas the story, you find out what happens to him.
Yeah.
So let's just say that this is the epilogue to Hadestown of what
Oh my God, I'm
happens
so
to
excited.
him.
I was going to cover this like a year ago and just totally forgot. So
yeah,
I'm excited for this.
Now I'm covering.
Yay.
So before we get started, let's go over where I got this week's information from. So like most mythology, there are many different versions, variations, especially one that is as old as Orpheus. So I received information from my World Mythology book by Arthur Cotterfell and Rachel Storm. I also received information from the Hellenic Museum website and worldhistory.org. They all had pretty good, like, different areas that covered his story, especially, like, different areas of it, which was really helpful. So for this story, I will be primarily discussing Orpheus. I tried to find more on Eurydice, but all I could find was that she was a nymph, like a wood nymph, and her father was Apollo. So that's all I could really
We did a
find.
whole play. We did the Eurydice play in college.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's so many different variations between the two, or like just different adaptations that have been done on their story throughout the years. Like it's one of the most famous. that even though if you ask someone like on the street, hey, do you know who Orpheus and Eurydice? They're probably gonna be like, who?
Right.
Is that like some pop star? Like what? So she's pretty much like a side character to like Orpheus's story, but she's still very influential in Greek mythology and his story. So
I think her name is so cool.
Right?
I wish it wasn't like, I wish it was like a normal name that you could like name someone.
You still could.
It sounds like what a celebrity would name their child. Eurydice.
Just call it, get another
Yuri.
dog and call him Eurydice.
Oh, wow. Interesting. A fish.
Just kidding, fish. So now Orpheus, he was
a poor young boy. Sorry.
Literally, James kept saying that line for 2 weeks straight.
Really?
Literally until last week that he literally has been just saying that line over and over again.
Why? Just for fun?
I guess
the only thing he remembers.
He really took that. And he does it in like a southern accent, like a deep southern drawl. He's like, a poor young boy.
That's hilarious.
Oh my God. I just look at him. I'm like, really? And he's like, what?
And he had a way with words. Okay. I'll leave the musical out of this. Let's just...
Anyway, so he was the son of the muse Calliope, which I love that name. And in some cases, he was also related to Apollo or the Thracian king Oeagrus. Either way, he had the lineage to the gods, very godly power, and it blessed him greatly. It is also mentioned that his other family was his brother Linos of Argos, who was the inventor of rhythm and melody. So
cool.
You can see where he gets his talent
from, music.
Too. Yeah. It would only be assumed that with his familia talent that Orpheus would also be gifted with music. And gifted was he. Orpheus was an otherworldly virtuoso. His preferred instrument was the lyre and the kithara, which is part of the lyre family. It's big. Because I didn't know what it was, so I looked it up and I was like, holy shit. It's kind of like a mix between a lyre and a harp.
Okay.
In a sense. Like, it's huge. Kind of. So he played this instrument beautifully. Like, this is what he was just hanging around with. Like, he would just be like, boop, 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 boop. And people would be like, oh my God.
Talent.
Literally. So anytime he would play and sing, all would be entranced. It wasn't even people that loved his singing and playing too. It was animals, sirens, and the atmosphere just stopped to listen to him. Like the whole environment was like, oh my God.
Captivated.
Oh yeah, he charmed the pants off them. Many have deemed him to be the best musician and poet of all time with his way of song. It also has been said that his musical talents would be passed on to teach the also famous King Midas.
Wow.
Midas, he's the guy who had the golden touch. So anything he touched turned to gold. Yeah.
Okay, that one. Got it.
I would like to cover him. This seems interesting. Plus, he was on an episode of Once Upon a Time.
That's awesome. Love that show.
What many may not know about Orpheus is that he had more than just a story of him and Eurydice. There was more to him. Before he even met his wife, Orpheus would go on an adventure just like an Odysseus or Heracles. So a part of Greek mythology are the Argonauts led by the famous Jason. I would like to cover him because he's a pretty interesting guy.
Jason?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
They all have fancy names and he's just Jason.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah. So their journey was to collect the golden fleece, and Orpheus at a time had joined the group.
Oh.
Yeah, these guys were like really big in like the Greek world. Like they're just making newspapers of these guys, and Orpheus was just like hanging out in Egypt. And he was like, that seems cool. So he would travel to Egypt for some reason, singing songs and doing whatever godly musicians did at the time. But when he heard word of what Jason and the Argonauts were setting out to do, Orpheus decided he wanted to tag along, and he headed back to Greece. So he kind of just like stumbled upon him, and he was like, hey guys, I have this great talent. Can I join you? And Jason was like, sure, bud. So while on the Black Sea for the hunt of the Golden Fleece, Orpheus would use his talented voice and lyre to help the squad. He would mellow out brawls on the ship. So it would be like two sailor guys just punching each other's face out, and like all of a sudden Orpheus would pop up with his lyre and be like,
la da 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 do.
And they're like, oh my god, you sound so great. I'm so sorry.
They're like,
bud."
I'm not mad anymore.
Literally. That's exactly how it is.
That's so funny.
So he would also he would even so much as calm the seas as they traveled.
Just with his voice?
With his voice and his lyre. Yeah, like he would just,
Dang.
there'd be some rough, choppy waves out there, and he'd be like, not today, Poseidon. And Poseidon was like, bruh, okay.
He's all right, you got it.
Yeah, literally. Just
I
keep
love
playing that song. It even came to the point where Orpheus would charm and lure sirens from killing them, because that was a big thing. So that's always been a really big thing for sailors, were the sirens, and not even them could get over what Orpheus was doing to them. They're like, oh my god. So when returning from the Black Sea, Orpheus continued on his talented way until he came across a nymph. This nymph would change everything for him. He would be instantly infatuated with the young nymph, who he would later on to discover who would hold the name Eurydice. Yeah. The shocking part of this story, and probably all of Greek mythology, is that Eurydice actually felt the same way about him.
Yeah.
It's very rare in Greek mythology that two of the both parties like each other.
That's why it's like a love story.
Exactly.
The rest are not so much.
And I think that's why it's so like recognizable, is that like they loved each other, and he was fighting for her, and it's the sad part of when they're in love. Mm-hmm. I'll get to it. The two would instantly fall in love, and they would be wed. In some adaptations, it is told that the marriage god Hymen did not bless their wedding, so it was already bad luck for their marriage to come.
Scandalous.
Literally.
They went with it anyway.
You gotta get blessed.
Yep.
I don't know why he wouldn't bless it.
He's like, they actually love each other? No way.
He's probably jealous. Yeah, gods are super jealous. Yeah. So they should have had Hymen bless the marriage, because it is where the tragedy begins. So in many accounts, it was on their wedding day that Eurydice would fall to this bad luck. In some cases, while being chased, and others in a field, Eurydice would fall prey to a snake that would bite her on her ankle. This snake would poison her, and she would fall dead. So not the same as the play, though.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Just a simple little snake bite.
I wasn't expecting it to be that tragic.
Yeah, literally fast. On their wedding day.
Oh my god. They didn't even get to be married? Mm-mm. Damn it.
This is why it's so devastating. So Orpheus would find her, in the field or whatever on their wedding day. He would just be looking for her, and he would find her, and immediately he was grief stricken and just started weeping, and he would weep continuously. Like, it made everybody uncomfortable. They were like, holy shit, this guy is going through it. Like, his wife is dead. And especially him running upon her, like, dead already.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't even get to hold her in her arms to tell her that he loved her, that he's just like, I'll come for you. Like, he literally just found her already dead.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. I think Greek tragedies are, oh my God, they are so sad.
Yeah, Jesus.
Whoever wrote these tragedies is like, oh my God. So in complete devotion to his wife, Orpheus knew that the only way to retrieve his love back would be to enter into the underworld. So with his lyre, Orpheus would charm his way into the underworld. First, he would charm the boatman, Charon, who would cross him across the sty. So this was kind of like the entryway into, like, as you're going from the land of the light, so like the upper ground area, started descending into like the underworld. There's like a river to get into there. Okay. And so Charon would take him down there. So Orpheus would then use his melodic voice to Cerberus, the three-headed dog, to enter into the underworld. Okay. Cerberus was a big bad boy. and he did not like intruders coming into his home.
Uh-oh.
So Orpheus, he was just like, da-da-da.
Woof, woof, woof.
And Cerberus was like, oh my God, I love you. Come on through.
Oh, he liked that.
Mm-hmm. He loved it.
Oh.
He was like, hey, bud, come on through. I got you. And Orpheus was like, thanks.
Imagine just breaking into someone's house and just singing, and then the dogs are like, all right, that's fine.
Literally, he just calmed them. So while crossing to find Hades, Orpheus would even charm the ghosts that were in the underworld.
Cute.
Yeah, so he'd be
Love
just
that.
on his way to find Hades, just playing along, and the ghost would be like, oh man, I haven't listened to music since I was alive.
Oh, comforting. It's comforting to them. That's so cute.
So eventually, Orpheus would be brought to the leaders of the underworld. First, he would meet Persephone, who was instantly allured by Orpheus and his story to save his wife. In some accounts, he didn't meet her at first, but in the ones that I was looking for, he did meet Persephone first and kind of like entranced her and kind of just like inspired her to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened to you. But then again, like the story of Persephone, she's very like, she's innocent. She's kind of like an innocent character. She was kind of forced into terrible situations. So I think she's more understanding. Whereas like Hades, he's like, I've been through the ringer. I was swallowed by my dad. Like,
That's true. Yeah.
it's tough.
A little bit different.
I was put down here. So Hades, on the other hand, he was not so convinced by Orpheus. Hades was impressed with how Orpheus made his way down by his music, but that taking the soul of his wife back was not going to be easy. He was like, you can't just take a soul back because she died randomly.
Yeah.
And he's like, I didn't even get to be married to her. And he's like, that's not my problem. So it honestly was like a slap to the face for Orpheus to go against the gods, to the nature of the gods, to try and bring back his wife. Like all the gods were like, he's playing with fire to like go against like our wishes or what we believe should happen. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, okay, this is not great. But Orpheus, he was very persistent. He was like, I will do anything to get my wife back. I just want her alive so we can be together. Like he was so adamant on it. He was probably crying, playing his music. He's like, please let me have her back.
Get you someone who loves you like that.
Exactly.
True love right there.
Right? Mm-hmm. So Hades and Persephone would eventually agree, but only with one stipulation. While heading back to the land of the light, so back to upground, the shadow of Eurydice would follow, but he could not look back. If he did, then Eurydice would be dragged back down to the underworld, never return back to life.
That reminds me of the musical.
Yeah. So Orpheus, he was happy to know that he would receive his wife back and was more than happy to agree to these conditions. He was like, yes, I will do that. We will be back together. I will be so encouraged to do it. I will never look back until I reach that light. And so Orpheus was then off back to the world above. So he started off confident, knowing that he would be reunited with his wife. He was like, yes, we can do this. I got this. But as time progressed, he started to doubt himself. He could not hear the footsteps behind him of Eurydice, so he started to believe that Hades tricked him and that she was not following along behind him. So close to the world above, he was only feet away from it to the light. He saw the light. He was so close, but Orpheus let his self-doubt consume him.
That's so crazy. Like, just knowing that it could be possible, why would you look back? You know?
Dude, he may have been lyrically talented, but when it came to
Not
smarts,
mentally.
it's like literally, even if he played like a trick on him, just get to like the world above, and if she isn't there, then go back down and fight harder.
Right. You were so close. Like, at least you tried
It's
that.
like you knew the stipulation was there, but of course, probably Hades also probably was like, or the other gods too, were probably like putting that self-doubt in his head.
I feel like it's a good lesson for everyone too.
Exactly.
You know, like as you're like trying to reach a goal, you're so close to the goal and then you give up. It's like
exactly
similar
it's
to
like,
that.
You need to stop doubting yourself, just push forward.
You're closer than you think you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he would turn around. There he saw his wife's shadow.
God.
And it was like a lot of them, it was just the look she had of grief and stricken and just sadness, because they both knew that they were not going to end up together.
It's so sad.
She had been following him all along. So right then, her shadow would disappear back into the underworld. Mm-hmm. This devastated Orpheus. The light that he had in his life would be blown out and soon became a hollow version of himself. He no longer played his beautiful music and refused any company. He was kind of like a Scrooge, but 10 times worse. Mm. Orpheus even so much as turned his nose up to any woman that would try to win his affection or even try to speak with him. He just stopped talking to women. He was like, I can't. Anytime he looked at a woman, he thought of Eurydice and he couldn't handle it. He became very spiteful. His grief was long and inconsolable. It came to a point that a group of women known as the Siconian Maenad would get involved. Now, these women were devoted worshippers of the god Dionysus. Mm-hmm.
Classic.
These women were pissed because he was such a hollow man, not understanding that his trauma and guilt was impacted onto him. But these women did not care and would go on to plan to attack him.
Wow.
Yeah, so this guy is just like super depressed, just feeling all this guilt for him being the reason that his wife couldn't come back to life, and it's just becoming an effect on him. And these women are just like, he's not talking to me, I must attack him.
Oh my god. Of course.
It's just like, let him just go die somewhere else.
Right?
Oh. So they would approach him while he sat under a tree and start to try to attack him with rocks, branches, and any force of nature to throw at him. With his lyre, Orpheus would play, and the environment would be instantly charmed to protect him. I'm guessing that these songs, though, were not very happy. They were probably very sad. Mm-hmm. So these women, fueled with even more anger, then took to using their hands. Together, they would rip this man apart, limb by limb, until all his limbs were all that was left. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming
in the play.
No, it does not.
The women would, in some cases, throw his parts into the sea, while in others, they were buried at Mount Olympus. His head, though, would float down the river, him crying out the name Eurydice.
Oh my god.
Eventually, his head would end up at Lesbos. Sometimes in other adaptations, his whole body ended up there. And he was retrieved by the muses, who would go on to bury all of him. It was actually, I don't think I added this in here, but I thought it was very interesting. At one point, they had his head, like there was a picture and part of the story where like Orpheus was like, his head was on a lyre and they played that way. And he was like crying out Eurydice.
Oh my god.
Like, what the hell? And there's like paintings of it and such. Yeah. It's crazy. So with his death, he could finally be reunited with his darling Eurydice. Mm. The cool fact that came from the tale of Orpheus and his death is that Zeus was inspired by his story and devotions to his wife, that Zeus actually created a constellation for him. Mm-hmm. This constellation we better know as Lyra. Like in Hercules, getting your own constellation is pretty damn impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was a goal for Phil.
Yep.
The tragedy that is Orpheus and Eurydice has throughout the ages inspired and even created debates through scholars. Plato, for example, did not care for Orpheus. He found him oddly cowardice and had some reservations about him being the most musically and poetically talented person.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Just jealous.
I was like savage. So Orpheus was a figure that was created way before written history of the Greek gods. And he had been an influential figure since the beginning. So that also grew the interest of the people of Greece. It had been connected that many who worshipped Orpheus in some way And even it was connected to the worship of Dionysus. So some people, like some of the temples that were for Dionysus, there was also some worshipers for Orpheus there as well, which I'm like, that's savage because Dionysus like worshipers.
Yeah.
The one who killed him.
Oh my God.
I was like, damn.
Wow.
So in pottery art, paintings, and other craft of art, Orpheus is also seen with his lyre. So that's a very common thing that you're either seeing him with his lyre, but there's also the occasional painting of him being torn apart by women. That's very tough.
That's crazy.
Yeah. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice has been told countless times, and there has been told in many different versions throughout history. There's also a lot to learn from this story. May it be devotion to your loved one or to trust that they will be there by your side.
Don't look back.
Don't look back. I would say this is one of the best Greek mythologies and finest tragedies.
It is. Poor limbs. Oh my God, his limbs. Oh,
so that is like,
wow.
That is Orpheus and Eurydice.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't, that Hadestown does not cover what happens
I'm glad
to
they
him
don't.
after.
I'm glad they end it at the part where he turns around.
Yeah, because if you don't know the story, you can kind of like, I feel like the end of the play gives you the option to be like, oh, he went back down there to get her, or the actual story of he just became a hollow man.
Yeah.
So there's like two different ways that you can perceive it, and honestly, that's what makes a fine play.
But it's already tragic. So
Yeah.
it's like if they showed the limbs and stuff, it's like, that's even worse.
Literally. But yeah, this is a tough one. This is a tough story just for the tragedy behind it. I feel like some have interesting endings, whereas this one is just like
Devastating.
yeah, because they loved each other.
You weren't
so
allowed
much.
to actually be in love back then.
So Greeks know how to do their tragedies. I gotta give them that. Ancient Greeks.
They really do.
Yeah,
It's a great story.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you covered it.
Oh, I love it. Where can you find us?
You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Historia the Podcast, and you can email us at historiathepodcast@gmail.com.
Hey.
You can also like turn your notifications on if you're on Spotify. I know for sure you can do that once you follow a podcast. Then it gives you every single time that they upload an episode, it lets you know. So if you want to do that, that's a really good thing to do. I'm not really familiar with like Apple Podcasts, but I think you can rate on there. So if you want to give us a rating, that would be awesome too.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
We'll catch you next week.
Yay. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.